Marcus Rivera had photographed over 300 weddings in his 8-year career, but the Castellano-Romano wedding at Riverside Manor was different, not because of the $50,000 budget, the 200 guests, or the imported Italian roses. What made this wedding special was that Marcus recognized at least 6 faces from his previous life, faces that belonged to people who weren't supposed to be at a family celebration. Marcus had spent 12 years as a CIA surveillance specialist, documenting criminal networks, gathering photographic evidence, and operating in situations where being invisible was literally a matter of life and death. Wedding photography, it turned out, was the perfect cover for someone with his particular skills. Nobody notices the photographer, everyone expects cameras, and you have access to every room, every conversation, every moment. But today, Marcus would discover that some moments are too dangerous to capture, and some evidence comes with a price too high to pay. Welcome to Daily Soldier Stories. Before we begin this story of hidden identities and dangerous revelations, tell me in the comments, from which city are you watching today? And if you believe the most dangerous secrets hide in plain sight, hit that subscribe button to support the channel. Riverside Manor sat on 20 acres of manicured grounds overlooking the Hudson River, the kind of venue that charged $30,000 just for the location. Marcus arrived at dawn to set up his equipment, moving through the empty ballroom with the efficient precision of someone who'd done this hundreds of times before. His gear was professional grade, but served dual purposes that his clients never suspected. The 600mm telephoto lens could capture intimate moments from across a crowded room, or document criminal activity from a safe distance. His digital cameras stored terabytes of high-resolution images that could be analyzed for details invisible to the naked eye. And his press credentials gave him access to areas that would be off-limits to ordinary guests. Marcus, there you are. The wedding planner, a stressed woman named Jessica, rushed across the marble floor in heels that clicked like rapid gunfire. The bride's family is already arriving for pre-ceremony photos. Are you ready? Always, Marcus replied, checking his camera settings one final time. Where would you like to start? Bridal suite first, then family portraits in the garden. The ceremony starts at 4, reception immediately after. As Jessica hurried away to coordinate other vendors, Marcus allowed himself a moment to assess the venue through different eyes than those of a wedding photographer. Multiple entrances and exits, clear sight lines, natural choke points where conversations might be overheard or photographed. Old habits died hard, even 8 years after leaving the agency. The first warning sign came during the bridal preparations. Marcus was capturing the traditional getting ready photos when he noticed the bride's father, Vincent Castellano, step onto the suite's balcony to take a phone call. Marcus automatically trained his telephoto lens toward the conversation, not because he suspected anything, but because candid moments often made the best shots. Through his viewfinder, Marcus watched Vincent's body language change from relaxed to tense, saw him check his watch repeatedly, and caught the moment when Vincent's expression shifted from wedding day joy to something much harder and more focused. Marcus couldn't hear the conversation, but he could read lips, a skill the CIA had considered essential for surveillance work. What he saw Vincent saying made his blood run cold. The shipment arrives Tuesday. Make sure the containers aren't inspected, the usual arrangements with customs. Marcus lowered his camera slowly. In 12 years of CIA work, he'd learned to recognize money laundering and smuggling operations. Vincent Castellano wasn't just the father of the bride. He was discussing what sounded like a major criminal enterprise. Marcus made a decision that would change everything. Instead of ignoring what he'd witnessed, he began documenting it. The ceremony itself was a masterpiece of traditional elegance. 200 guests dressed in their finest string quartet playing Pachelbel's canon, flower petals drifting like snow as the bride walked down the aisle. Marcus moved through it all like a ghost, capturing the moments that would become family treasures for generations. But he was also watching, analyzing, and gradually identifying a pattern that chilled him. During the processional, Marcus noticed that several guests weren't watching the bride. Instead, they were scanning the crowd, checking exits, positioning themselves with clear sightlines to the altar. professional security awareness that went far beyond normal wedding coordination. In the receiving line after the ceremony, Marcus observed conversations that lasted too long, handshakes that involved the discreet passing of small objects, and greetings between people who clearly knew each other well, despite being seated at different family tables. Most telling of all was the interaction between Vincent Castellano and a man Marcus recognized from FBI wanted posters, Castellano-Romano, allegedly connected to international art theft and money laundering operations. They embraced like old friends, but their conversation involved pointed gestures toward specific guests and frequent checks of their surroundings. Marcus began systematically photographing everyone who seemed out of place. A woman in an expensive dress who carried herself like law enforcement. Two men in expensive suits who moved with the coordinated precision of a security detail. A guest who spent more time watching other people than celebrating the wedding. During the cocktail hour, Marcus positioned himself near the bar where conversations tended to be more relaxed and less guarded. Using his telephoto lens, he began capturing images of business cards being exchanged, documents being passed discreetly between guests, and phone numbers being shared with the urgency of people conducting important business. What he was documenting, Marcus realized, wasn't a wedding reception. It was a criminal summit disguised as a family celebration. The question was, what was he going to do about it? The reception dinner provided Marcus with his most valuable intelligence yet. As guests took their seats for the 7-course meal, he noticed something that confirmed his worst suspicions about what he was witnessing. The seating arrangement wasn't random family groupings. It was a carefully orchestrated gathering of criminal enterprises from across the Northeast, table assignments that put art dealers next to shipping company executives, importers next to customs officials, and financial advisors next to politicians. Marcus began photographing each table systematically, using his professional duties as cover for what was actually intelligence gathering. His telephoto lens captured business cards, documents, and most importantly, faces that he cross-referenced against his memory of FBI most wanted lists and international criminal databases. At table 6, he identified a man wanted by Interpol for antiquities smuggling. Table 12 included a woman suspected of running art authentication scams for stolen masterpieces. The head table featured Vincent Castellano, seated next to 3 men Marcus recognized as high-level organized crime figures from New York, Boston, and Philadelphia. During the father of the bride speech, Marcus noticed something that made his professional paranoia spike into genuine alarm. Vincent wasn't just celebrating his daughter's marriage. He was announcing a new family business partnership that would bring everyone closer together in profitable ventures. The applause that followed wasn't wedding celebration, it was criminal enterprise approval. Marcus realized that he wasn't just witnessing a crime family gathering. He was documenting the formation of what appeared to be a major criminal network, with evidence that could potentially bring down operations spanning multiple states and millions of dollars in illegal activity. His camera's memory cards now contained enough photographic evidence to support dozens of federal indictments. But getting that evidence to law enforcement would require Marcus to survive the rest of the evening without anyone realizing what he'd been documenting. That's when things went wrong. During the band's break between dinner and dancing, Marcus was changing lenses near the edge of the ballroom when he noticed someone watching him with more than casual interest. A young man in an expensive tuxedo, probably mid-20s, with the kind of sharp attention that suggested professional training. The man approached with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Great photos tonight. You've really been capturing everything, haven't you?" "That's the job," Marcus replied carefully. "Comprehensive wedding coverage." "Yeah, I noticed. Very comprehensive. Even getting shots of conversations, business cards, things most wedding photographers might miss." Marcus felt the familiar chill of blown operational security. "I take a lot of candid shots. Helps tell the complete story of the day." "I'm sure it does." The man's smile became predatory. "Mind if I take a look at some of the photos you've been taking? My Uncle Vincent is very interested in seeing how well you've documented his daughter's special day." It wasn't a request. Marcus had 2 choices: comply and hope the man didn't recognize the surveillance nature of his photography or refuse and confirm that he was more than just a wedding photographer. Neither option was good, but Marcus had learned during his CIA years that when operational security was compromised, sometimes the best defense was controlled offense. "Of course," Marcus said, maintaining his professional demeanor while his mind raced through exit strategies. "Let me show you some of the formal shots." He turned his camera's LCD screen toward the man and began scrolling through images, carefully avoiding the telephoto surveillance shots while displaying traditional wedding photography. Family portraits, ceremony moments, reception candids, nothing that would reveal his true focus. "These are beautiful," the man said, but his eyes never left Marcus's face. "But I'm particularly interested in the photos you took during dinner. You seemed very focused on documenting the guest interactions." Marcus realized the man had been watching him far more carefully than he'd suspected. Professional surveillance by someone who knew what to look for. "Wedding photographers always document the social aspects," Marcus replied. "It's part of telling the complete story." "Right. The complete story." The man stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Here's the thing, Marcus. It is Marcus, right? My Uncle Vincent is a very private man. He doesn't like complete stories that include details about his business conversations." The threat was clear but subtle. Marcus had photographed criminal activity, someone had noticed, and Vincent Castellano wanted the evidence controlled. "I'm not sure what you're implying," Marcus said, but he was already calculating distances to exits, potential weapons among his equipment, and ways to protect the evidence he'd gathered. "I'm not implying anything. I'm telling you directly. Uncle Vincent would like you to delete any photos that aren't directly related to wedding festivities. You know, family shots, ceremony moments, celebration pictures, nothing that shows people conducting business." Marcus had reached the moment every intelligence operative eventually faces, the choice between personal safety and professional duty. The evidence on his camera could potentially stop criminal operations that might harm countless innocent people. But defending that evidence could cost him his life. "That would compromise my professional standards," Marcus said carefully. "I don't delete client photos. Even when the client requests it. Even then, it's a matter of professional ethics." The man's expression hardened. "Marcus, I don't think you understand the situation you're in. This isn't a request. Uncle Vincent has very strong feelings about privacy." That's when Marcus made his decision. 8 years ago, he'd left the CIA because he was tired of operating in moral gray areas where good and evil weren't always clearly defined. But this situation was black and white. He had evidence of criminal activity, and people were threatening him to suppress it. Marcus Rivera, wedding photographer, might have walked away. But Marcus Rivera, former CIA surveillance specialist, knew exactly what to do. "Tell your Uncle Vincent that I understand his concerns about privacy, but also tell him that I have professional insurance policies that activate if anything unfortunate happens to me or my equipment." It was a bluff, but delivered with the calm authority of someone who'd negotiated with much more dangerous people than wedding guests with criminal connections. The man studied Marcus for a long moment, clearly trying to determine whether he was dealing with a civilian photographer or someone with more substantial backing. "I'll relay your message," he said finally, "but Uncle Vincent is very persuasive when he needs something handled quietly." "I'm sure he is. Fortunately, I'm very good at handling situations quietly myself." The rest of the reception proceeded with artificial normalcy, but Marcus could feel the weight of surveillance from multiple directions. Vincent Castellanos' people were watching him, tracking his movements, waiting for an opportunity to resolve their photographer problem without disrupting the wedding celebration. Marcus continued working, capturing the traditional moments that would satisfy his legitimate contract while discreetly backing up his surveillance photos to multiple secure storage systems. His equipment included satellite uplink capabilities that he'd maintained since leaving the agency. Insurance policies that most wedding photographers didn't need. During the cake-cutting ceremony, Marcus transmitted copies of his most damaging photographs to secure servers in 3 different countries. If something happened to him or his equipment, the evidence would still exist in locations beyond Vincent Castellano's reach. But Marcus knew that surviving the evening would require more than digital backup plans. He needed an extraction strategy that would get him safely away from Riverside Manor with his evidence intact. The opportunity came during the bouquet toss. As guests gathered around the bride for the traditional ceremony, Marcus noticed that most of the security attention was focused on the crowd. The exits were less heavily watched, and the chaos of celebration would provide perfect cover for a discreet departure. Marcus began packing his equipment with practiced efficiency, maintaining the appearance of a photographer finishing his contracted duties. He had documented the key moments, captured the family portraits, and fulfilled his professional obligations. No one could question his departure at this point in the evening. As he wheeled his equipment cases toward the service entrance, Marcus was intercepted by Vincent Castellano himself. "Leaving so soon, Marcus?" "The evening's just getting started." Vincent was a man in his 60s, well-dressed and outwardly charming, but Marcus could see the calculation behind his eyes. This was someone accustomed to getting what he wanted through persuasion, intimidation, or force. "I've captured all the essential moments," Marcus replied. "The bride and groom will have beautiful memories of their special day." "I'm sure they will. But I'm concerned about some of the other memories you might have captured. Sometimes wedding photographers see things that aren't meant for family albums." Marcus met Vincent's gaze directly. "I photograph what I see. Nothing more, nothing less. That's what concerns me. You see a great deal. It's part of being good at my job." Vincent smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Marcus, I've been in business a long time. I know the difference between someone who accidentally sees too much and someone who's looking for specific things. Which one are you?" It was a direct challenge. Marcus could continue pretending to be an innocent wedding photographer, or he could acknowledge the game they were really playing. "I'm someone who believes beautiful weddings deserve beautiful photographs," Marcus said. "Nothing more complicated than that." "Good. Then you won't mind ensuring that only the beautiful photographs survive the evening." Vincent's hand moved slightly inside his jacket, a gesture that wasn't quite threatening but carried unmistakable implications. Marcus had reached the point where diplomatic solutions were no longer possible. "Mr. Castellano, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm not just a wedding photographer. I'm someone with experience in situations exactly like this one. My photos are already backed up in locations you can't reach, and my absence from tomorrow's photo delivery would trigger inquiries from people you definitely don't want asking questions." Vincent's expression shifted from confident intimidation to genuine concern. "Who are you?" "Someone who knows the difference between a family celebration and a criminal enterprise. Someone who documented everything that happened here tonight, and someone who's walking out of here with evidence that could change your life significantly." Marcus began moving toward the exit, gambling that Vincent wouldn't risk violence at his daughter's wedding. "This isn't over," Vincent called after him. "Yes, it is," Marcus replied without turning around. "Because tomorrow morning, copies of tonight's photos will be in the hands of people who know exactly what to do with them." 3 weeks later, the FBI's Organized Crime Task Force executed coordinated raids across 5 states, arresting 27 individuals connected to a criminal network that had been operating for over a decade. The evidence that broke the case wide open came from what agents described as the most comprehensive photographic documentation of criminal activity we've ever seen. Marcus Rivera was never publicly identified as the source of the evidence. His cooperation agreement with federal prosecutors included protections that ensured his continued safety and the preservation of his wedding photography business. The photos themselves became legendary within law enforcement circles, perfectly composed images that captured not just criminal activity, but the complete social and organizational structure of a major criminal enterprise. Professional surveillance photography disguised as wedding documentation. Marcus continued photographing weddings, but with a new appreciation for the power of being invisible in plain sight. His reputation grew, not just for beautiful wedding photos, but for the kind of comprehensive documentation that captured every important moment of a couple's special day. He never forgot the lesson of the Castellano-Romano wedding. Sometimes the most dangerous assignments come disguised as the most ordinary jobs. And sometimes the best cover for a surveillance specialist is hiding behind a camera at a celebration where everyone wants to be photographed. 6 months later, Marcus received a wedding inquiry from a family in New Jersey. The budget was generous, the venue exclusive, and the guest list included several names that appeared on federal watch lists. Marcus accepted the job immediately, because some photographers capture moments, but the best photographers capture truth. And Marcus Rivera had found his calling in making sure that the most important truths never stayed hidden, no matter how elegant the celebration that tried to conceal them. The perfect shot, he'd learned, wasn't always the one that made the family album. Sometimes it was the one that made the federal case. This story was brought to you by Daily Soldier Stories. Have you ever noticed how invisible photographers become at events? They see everything, access every area, and document every moment, but we rarely wonder what they might be noticing beyond just the celebration. The next time you see a photographer at a wedding or event, remember that sometimes the person behind the camera has stories of their own. Tell us about a time when you noticed someone working quietly in the background who might have had more depth than you initially realized. And if you think stories like this deserve to be heard, subscribe to support the channel. We'll see you in the next one.